We are live. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Mike.
Apologies, everybody around the world. I'm having major technical difficulties today, but I'm here now. Welcome to Don't You Know I've Had a Stroke? And my dear friend Joe hasn't had a stroke, but she's a very inspirational person in my life. So I think we're just going to get started. If you're listening anywhere in the world, please comment and tell me where you are from, and any questions for Joe or myself, then please let me know. Thank you. Right, Joe,
Hi, Mike.
introduce yourself.
Uh,
Uh,
I, I'm Joe Teague, and I've been friends with Mike for many years. I think we've got children roughly the same ages, haven't we? And I'm married to Danny. I've been married to Danny for many years. And we have three children who are now, well, they assure me they're grown up, they're young adults. And when they were very small, when they were babies, really, I was diagnosed with vascular Ehlers Danlos, which is a rare genetic disorder of collagen, which makes your blood vessels prone to sudden rupture. And over the years, I've had a couple of near misses, shall we say. I'm also an occupational therapist, and I've been working in that for about 35 years now, I think.
Joe, can you explain to people what you are an occupational therapist, because they won't understand in America?
No, well, occupational therapists I think are worldwide, but perhaps we're called something different. But basically, working with people who have a disability or an illness, and we look at all the different factors that affect their lives. So the physical disabilities that they may have, and the influence of their psychological and mental health. And we look at the all the activities that they wish to do. So it might just be something as simple as getting to, or as essential as getting to the toilet or having a shower, or it might be going to work, or it might be going to the community to access different facilities and to have a social life. So whatever that an individual wants to do with their lives, we try to find a way round to help them become more independent and live the life that they wish to live.
And have you worked with many stroke survivors?
I have over the years, yes. I started out life working as a community occupational therapist. When I qualified, I did a year or so in a hospital with people with neurological conditions. And then I worked in the community when I saw a wide range. Basically, any disability, I would go and see them and see what I could do to improve their lives.
Joe, can you see the comment on screen?
We know what an occupational therapist. Oh, that's good.
Oh, that's Celinda, who's a dear friend from Napa. Well, they've got a timeshare in Napa, so she's a caregiver for Tom. Um,
Right. Hello.
but she's a know-it-all as well. But I love her to bits, and Tom. And we have Jerry from Austin, Texas.
Wow.
Lynette Price from West Virginia. You didn't believe me, Joe, when I said I was a global sensation, did you?
You certainly are. You've gone up in the world, Mike. It used to just be Lanswick Major. Now it's the world.
Right, back to your story.
Go on then.
Can you tell me, Ellis, Ellis Danros, what it actually is, please?
Ehlers Danlos is it's a sort of it's a disorder of collagen, which makes your it can be any organ could be very weak. So the most common form of it would be the hypermobility form, where people have very stretchy skin, or they have bendy joints that they can move in all sorts of directions that most people can't, and they tend to dislocate, and they end up having a lot of pain and a lot of disability from it. I have a different form of it that affects blood vessels. So my blood vessels and internal organs are lacking the collagen, and they're prone to sudden rupture. And the vascular form of it is hereditary. So there's a 50-50 chance of inheriting it.
And you inherited it, yeah?
Sadly, I did inherit it, yes. My father, he died, actually he died just before I was born, a couple of months before I was born. And he had an aortic aneurysm that burst. So in the early 60s, they didn't investigate any more than that. They didn't suspect anything more. It was just put down to one of those awful things. And it wasn't till I became ill, when I was 39, and they heard my history in the hospital. And then I actually had a heart attack, what they thought was a heart attack, but when they investigated, it was a rupture of two of my coronary arteries. And I ended up needing emergency heart bypass surgery. And the surgeon who did that surgery, he sort of guessed. He didn't tell me at the time, but he sort of guessed that there was clearly something wrong with the tissues. It was very hard to do the surgery and to get the tissues to knit back together again. And it was about a year later that they'd taken a biopsy, a skin biopsy, and it was about a year later that I got the formal diagnosis. And in those days, it wasn't that long ago, but there was no diagnostic centre for the vascular form in Great Britain, and my tissues had to be sent overseas, which is why it took a year for me to get the diagnosis. But now there are two. I know, Mike, you and I, we've been very involved with fundraising. So initially, the vascular form of Ehlers-Danlos was a part of the Ehlers-Danlos Support UK, but there's also an American one, and I know of, and around the world, I should think. But we've split, the vascular form has split away from that slightly, with something called Annabelle's Challenge. Annabelle is a young girl who also has the condition. And they have done so much through fundraising for research into the condition. There's now a lot of research going on in the UK, and to set up 2 diagnostic and support centres in England. So it's very different now if you're diagnosed with it. At the time I was diagnosed, there was really no support or nowhere to go to for information.
I can remember doing a fundraising. I used to have a fancy dress shop and I did the balloons for your dinner dance.
You did? Oh gosh, yes, we did organised a ball. That was good fun, wasn't it? In a marquee. It was a shame it was a very cold night, but we had a marquee and we all got glammed up, and we raised several £1,000s that night. It was wonderful. But
And I gave you the balloons for free.
thank you very much. You did.
Right, wrong one. So Slew says she had a month of intense OT dealing with the pain from fibromyalgia and how to continue teaching because she was a teacher. Slew.
Right. Yes. Trying to find ways around it. Try to find ways to manage it. Yeah. Good. Oh, I hope it was a success.
So Lynn Paul, I've lost him. So Lynn Paul is from Pennsylvania.
Hi, Lynn.
How do you spell the condition, Joe?
Vascular, Vascular, Ehlers, which is Ehlers, and then Danlos, Danlos. I think it's named after 2 Belgian doctors who first named and identified the condition.
So let me know if you've heard of it in the United States, please. Sulu will know. She knows everything. Can I ask a personal question, Joe? Did any of your family get diagnosed with it?
Yeah. The children, when I was diagnosed, it was clearly, I had been very, very ill, and my fear was that would happen again, or that I wouldn't be around for very long. The actual life expectancy then was 40, and I was 39. So, it was
Cutting
pretty.
it fine, really.
It did. It was pretty horrendous to try and get our heads around it, and the children were quite tiny. They were quite young, and we could cope with me being ill, but we couldn't cope with the thought that I may have passed it on to the children. We couldn't deal with that. And the advice we had was to not do anything for a while till they were older and they could have counselling, and then with our guidance decide if they actually wanted to be tested or not, because there's no treatment for the condition. And actually, I think knowing is, I don't know if it's better or it's worse, really. It's better in that you can take some medication to keep your blood pressure low and reduce the risk, and you can not do risky activities that might cause a rupture. But knowing is, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It clouds every part of our lives. But the children then, Will, our oldest, when he was in his teens, he had 6 months counselling and was tested and luckily was negative for it. And then Alice and Peter, who are only 11 months apart, but that's a different story. They went through counselling at the same time. And unfortunately, Peter was found to have it. Alice is negative, but Peter has it. So, 50-50, we have 3 children. Perhaps we count ourselves lucky that one has it, but we carry on now, sort of trying to safeguard Peter a little bit. And he's a young man who wants to do all sorts of things, trying to keep his feet on the ground and live the life he wants to, but be careful not to take the risks. And also, after I was diagnosed, I have a brother and a sister, and it was suggested that they might have it, but they were actually 7 and 8 years older than me. And the professor who diagnosed me said that they were I was quite old to be having first symptoms, and as they were that much older, it was unlikely that they had symptoms, that they had it. So my brother chose not to go ahead with testing, and a good few years later, 7 or 8 years later maybe, he became ill, and it was clear that he had vascular Ehlers Danlos. He had an aneurysm, he had problems with his kidneys, and he ended up in London having major surgery. And just as we thought he was getting back to fitness, sadly he had a major aneurysm, aortic aneurysm, and he passed away, which was it brought it all home then. Dreadful. We still haven't come to terms with that. We don't. But he was a young man in the prime of his life, who was absolutely full of fun, and we loved his company, and we still miss him dearly. And he has 2 children, one of which also has the condition. So the only positive I can get from that is I don't feel quite so lonely anymore. I'm not the only one in this family with it, but it's a bit warped to think that that's a good thing, because it's a bit miserable to live with.
So you got this dreadful news, but that didn't stop you doing something crazy, did it?
No, but it cemented the idea in our heads that we would do something crazy. Danny was in the Air Force then, and we had always talked about one day we wanted to go travelling, take the children, and go and have a big adventure. And we thought when I was ill that was the end of those plans, that we wouldn't stand a chance of getting away. It would be a stupid thing to do. And then fate is weird sometimes, isn't it? Danny was made redundant, or he opted to take redundancy from the Air Force, and he was offered a job starting 6 months later at the same place, basically the same job that he had been doing, but as a civilian. And so we had 6 months when he was going to be paid pretty much full pay, when we were free to go away. So we did. We took the children. They were 4, 5, and 8, I think, at the time, so a lot younger than we had bargained on. But we took them out of school for 6 months, and we bought a people carrier, and we went off around Europe and had a wonderful 6 months, building some big memories that we still talk about now. But the thinking behind it was that we didn't know how long we would have together as a family. So we wanted to go and build those memories.
I told you know it all would know.
Sorry, say again.
So Lou, I told you she was a know it all. Do you want to read that?
Yes. Symptoms include overly flexible joints that can dislocate and skin that's translucent, elastic, and bruises easily. Yeah, in some cases there can be dilation and rupture of the blood vessels. Yeah, so in the hypermobile, which is by far more common, then that's when you get the flexible joints. But it's the vascular form where the skin bruises very easily and you get the rupture of major, well, and any, they call it any empty vessel. So it could be, your major organs, or it can be your blood vessels. Oh, yeah, for the loss of mark.
So you're in Europe. Were you worried at all? How did you manage to get health insurance?
Well, we were lucky at the time that we had a bank account that included health insurance. They've caught up with us since, and they won't insure me anymore. But they did then. And so we just went, we didn't think too much about it. I think we were so relieved that I had been so ill for the best part of a year, and I was back on my feet, and we just wanted to go off and have some fun. And we didn't think too long and hard about it, which was perhaps foolish, but we went and did it, and we're so glad that we did.
So then you decided to do what?
Oh, well then, well, when we were away, it we didn't have easy access to the internet, and we didn't have mobile phones where we could ring home. Well, we could, but it would cost a fortune, and that's if you could actually get the signal to do it. So we started writing emails, like a long email once a week or so, when I would recount what we'd been doing over the past week. And I included all the silly, funny things that had happened. And I sent them home. I sent them to friends, and but they were mainly for the family. And my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, is an English teacher, and she enjoyed them. And she kept saying to me, "You must put them together into a book. You must do something with them." But we came home, and I went back to work, and the children were still young, and I didn't have time to do much with it. And then in 2009, I was ill again and had another period of about a year when I was recovering. And so I used that time, once I was well enough, to put them all into a book, to write them into a story. And the idea at the time was to have them as a memory again for the children, so
Yeah.
that they would remember. We were worried that maybe Peter was only 4, maybe he wouldn't remember much of the trip. So I wrote it all into the book. And a few years later, it was published. I've got it right here, if anyone wants to. See You in September, which was the name of the party we had, wasn't it? Because we left in the February time, and as we left, I said to everyone, "See you in September." So it became, and that was published, which was brilliant. I didn't ever expect to have a book published. But the best bit of it was that I was on telly and I was on the radio, and I was able to talk to lots of different groups and talk to them about vascular Ehlers Danlos and living
I
with a
think that's
condition
when
like
you
that.
stopped talking to me because you became famous.
I'd outdone you. Yeah,
Um,
it was.
and the book is available on Amazon, yeah?
It is available on Amazon, either as a book or on Kindle.
I think they have Amazon in America.
Yeah. I should think so. Mm. Oh, there we are.
So Lou has a younger brother. I've never internist, hospitalist. Does that mean a trainee doctor?
I'm not sure. No.
I'm sure she'll tell us.
Mm, yeah. I feel lucky now that I have good medical cover, not medical help that I need. So I have scans once a year, and I have regular sort of monitoring. So there's nothing much that can be done about the condition other than keeping an eye on it, really.
And have you had to shield in this global pandemic?
Well, I have shielded pretty much. I wasn't put in the very high risk group, I think what the doctor said, you're not in the very high risk, you're just in the high risk or something like that. So, but you know, the stress it would put on my lungs and my blood vessels, I'm not going to risk it. So I have been very careful, yes.
But you
And what
haven't
about
written another book now.
another book? It would be depressing to write a book about this, wouldn't it, really? What can I put in it other than gardening and walking? That's about all I've done.
So, Joe, what's important in your life?
What's important? Well, that's well, my family and my friends, they're very important. My family, keeping them close, keeping them well. Of course, Mike, you are exceedingly important in my life. And seeing my children grow up into adults has been a privilege that I didn't think I would have. You know, I used to, when I was first diagnosed, I used to um, do a deal with God quite often. You know, if you give me another year, I'll be very good. And then if you give me another year, I'll be even better. So I consider myself
And
lucky to.
faith important to you, Joe?
My faith has been very important. It's given me a strength to carry on. Yes, and actually, when I was having the surgery, my heart surgery, before the diagnosis was, it did the plan was the surgeon that I had, and he was a Christian, and he prayed over me with his team several times while he was doing the surgery, and I was really touched by that.
Would they be allowed to do that now?
I don't know. I don't know, but I'm glad that they did.
Isn't that great that the doctor understood your faith and wanted to share that moment with
Yes.
you?
Well, I think faith was important to him as well. And he asked for help to do the surgery. It wasn't easy surgery, and he knew it meant a lot to me. So, yeah, yeah. It would be a shame if you couldn't do it now, wouldn't it, really?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next, Joe?
What's next? Well, I carry on, really. I'm still working as an OT. I still enjoy my work. The children are growing up. We just carry on, and I hope I stay well. You know, I don't know how long I will be well for. You know, I think of my brother often and how quickly we lost him just when we thought he was well again, and how suddenly we lost him. You know, there one minute, gone the next. So I just keep making the most of the time that I have. I think that's the important thing, isn't it? That
And you told me some good news about your daughter. She wants to change direction. And what does she want to become?
she wants to be an occupational therapist. Yeah, which is wonderful news. I told her that 3 or 4 years ago. I said, you'd make a wonderful OT. And no, 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 of course she knew better. So she's been at university doing psychology. And as she's been studying that, she said, actually, what I really want to do is be an OT. So hopefully, she's applying for places now. Hopefully she'll get a place next year to start.
That's amazing. And I've worked with Alice in my youth theatre, so I know she'll be amazing. She knows
Yeah,
how to talk to people and
yeah,
shows a lot of empathy, which
she does.
is lacking these days.
Well, yes, yes, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
So a hospitalist is the doctor who sees all the patients in the hospital. He knows a lot and puts in orders for the specialists a patient may need.
Right. Okay.
So I suppose that's a
Yeah.
consultant
A
almost.
consultant that we would see. Yes. Yeah. The all the people in Scotland and England and Northern Ireland are referred to the centre, the diagnostic centre in London or Sheffield. Most of the children go to Sheffield, but most of the adults go to Sheffield. But can you believe that Wales doesn't have the funding for us to go there? And we've tried several times and we haven't managed to get the funding yet to go. I've spoken to them on the phone, and Peter's spoken to them on the phone on a very informal basis, but we can't get the funding to go.
So Jerry says, as a stroke survivor, we really appreciate our OTs and PTs. Their PTs are, um,
Physiotherapists.
I was going to say
Okay, I
personal,
think in America it's physical. Is it physical
yeah,
therapists?
physical therapists.
Mm.
Um, and Jerry he's fab. I do like Jerry. He had a stroke and then he's not long broke his hip.
Oh, crikey, that takes a bit of getting over then when you've had a stroke as well.
He just wants sympathy, really. Well, what we have, Joe, is a great community supporting us. How's the community with Ehlers Danlos?
It's good. It's very good. Because hypermobility form of Ehlers-Danlos is quite common. I can't give you the figures, but for every one of me, there's probably 250 of people with the hypermobile form of it. And so any conference or support group we had tended to be steered towards them, understandably, because there were so many more. But now that the vascular Ehlers-Danlos has separated from them, and we now come under Annabelle's challenge in the UK, it's a wonderful network, because I think it's only something like 250 families that are affected. More than one member maybe in each family, but it's quite a small number of families affected by this. So it's lovely. Yeah, you get a good support.
And do you know the figures like around the world or in America?
No, the consultant when I was diagnosed said it was about 1 in a million in average. And Danny, bless him, do you know what he said? He said, "I always knew you were 1 in a million."
Oh, bless him. He's worth keeping, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a keeper.
So we have Naomi. I can't remember where Naomi's from. Sulu will tell me, I'm sure. Sulu's got this game, Joe, that she likes to know where everybody comes from. And she has a show every day with her husband, Tom.
All right. Okay.
If you look back at the interview, it was a
Yes.
really good interview.
All
And
right.
I've had a really down week this week. And
Yeah,
Tom
same.
told me, sent me a lovely message. And he does have speech problems, but the meaning was there.
Good. Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? That's lovely that you can be international and support each other. That's so important.
I was born to be international, Joe.
Of course you were.
You've seen me on stage.
What, as the Dame? Yeah, I'm still in therapy for it. I see you as the Dame of the pantomime.
Washington State, Naomi's from.
All right. Oh, crikey, yeah.
I bet it's
Well,
all eating up now in America, not long to go.
oh, for the election, yes.
Oh, actually, I don't think we're allowed to talk about politics.
No, I think maybe stay off politics. Maybe in America and the UK, it's about as bad as each other, isn't it, really?
I think so, yeah.
Mm.
Right, I'm going to ask, has anybody got any questions for Jo? Anything at all? She's like an open book called See You in September. See what
Oh,
I
very
did there,
clever.
Jo?
Very clever. See what you did. That was impressive.
Come on, guys. Any questions? Even if it's about my mental state this week. Oh, Paul Cummins, he's a stroke survivor and suffers with aphasia. And
Right. Okay.
he does a show called Morning Coffee every day for everybody anywhere in the world.
Wow, it's brilliant. It's a huge network you've got going on. That's wonderful.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you like to say Salute and Tom do one every day, and Jerry does one every Tuesday and Thursday,
Right.
and he has
Right.
stroke survivors as well. But my aim was not to just have stroke survivors. I wanted inspirational people that have been in my life, and you were definitely one of them.
Oh, thank you. That's a nice thing to say.
But it's
Well,
true, Joe. You helped me a lot.
good.
See, I've sold one book as well. Am I on commission?
Yeah, you can have the 5p out of the 10p I usually have. Yeah, the book is we went on the trip in 2006, so some of it is a little old now, but it's especially if you've got a family or children, you'll appreciate it. It's a very light-hearted take I didn't want to go into all the depressing stuff about, you know, my illness, and that's miserable. That was covered in about half a page, I think. It's more about life with young children and how life goes very wrong sometimes when you're on the wrong side of Europe. So yeah, some good stories in it.
Yeah, I actually haven't read it yet. You didn't. You didn't send me a signed copy.
No, the idea is, Mike, you buy a copy and then I'll sign it for you.
Oh, right.
Oh dear.
Do you think it's quite? What's the word I'm looking for? Here, well, you know, when you write something down, it's better. Here, what's the word?
Cathartic?
Yeah,
That the word?
yeah.
It was quite cathartic, yes, writing it down. Writing down some of my feelings around the illness and how we all responded to it, yes. Because I think up to that point, I hadn't spoken much about it. That was how we dealt with it, be that right or wrong. Um, we pretended in a way that it hadn't really happened, and we carried on our lives for as long as we could. Um, yeah, stuck our head in the sand. So actually writing it all down in the book was perhaps the first time that I had spoken about my emotions around it. And I had to temper that with making everybody laugh. I couldn't just do the miserable bits. I had to do the positive bits and the funny bits as well. So, you know, I know people who have read it, they say that they cry. It makes them cry in places, and it makes them laugh out loud in other places. So
And
that
can I
was
ask how your children coped with the news, and of course, Danny the Magnificent?
oh, hang on, he's not too far away, so don't let him hear you say that. um, the children, the children that were very young, so when I was ill, I think they just accepted that I was ill, and we didn't fill them in on any more detail than that, really. The thought was always that I was going to get better, that I would recover, that I would come back to being their mum and looking after them. So we sheltered them a bit, really, from that, which made it a bit easier for us to cope with.
Yeah.
And Danny and I, you know, I think it made us very determined to make the most of the time that we did have and to appreciate the time with the children and appreciate our time together. But that doesn't mean we didn't have very dark days, you know, especially in the beginning. I think we were both quite despondent, and it was difficult to even talk to each other at times. We had a
Well,
dog, and
you
he
didn't.
got
You
walked.
didn't. You didn't have many dog days because you were always abroad.
Well, no, we had in that first year when I really was very ill, you know, to the point of Danny was carrying me up the stairs in the beginning, and I had an irregular heartbeat and ended up back in hospital, and we were very dependent on family to help us out, although we don't have our families locally, and friends, as you know, all our friends in Atlantic Major rallied round and helped us, got us back on our feet. Um, so you know we appreciated all that, but that first year it was tough. We didn't want to talk to other people. I know some people in the family tried to talk to us, and we felt very much, well, mind your own business. You know, we tried to push them away a bit, because we couldn't deal with it. But we dealt with it the way that we could, and then gradually dropped bits into the children as they got older. And then, obviously, by the time they needed to make a decision about being tested themselves, we had to be quite open and speak very openly with them about it. But I don't think we ever sat down with the children and said, well, you know, I might not be around for long. We couldn't bring ourselves to do that.
So Lou says, "Live life to the fullest."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You never know. You never know what's going to happen to you. So, you know, live it any way you can to the best you can. Doesn't mean we don't have miserable days, and it doesn't mean we. I think when I was first diagnosed, and I was so ecstatic to have got over the surgery that we thought, well, you know, we'll never argue again. We'll never leave the house without saying how much we love each other, and we'll never fight over whose turn it is to walk the dog. But life gets in the way, doesn't it? And you know, life carries on, and many times we sort of forget that it's around us. and then something will happen to bring it all back into focus again.
Yeah, I've been a miserable git all week
Oh dear.
because I was fighting for something um, to do with my mental health.
Right. Yeah.
And the messages of goodwill have been amazing.
Yeah.
And I will share one at the end because it was just really important. I mean, Jude has a go at me, my wife, for getting worked up, but you know, when I fight for the rights of disabled people, I'm not going to stop.
No. No. Or something you feel that you should have. No. No.
Because people, I can remember my special doctor said, "Why do you want something for your mental health? A stroke does not affect it."
Well, yes. Well, we come back to occupational therapy then, don't we, really? That, of course it does. If you have any physical ailment, it will have a psychological effect on you as well. And the psychology comes into how you then cope with that condition. And if you're doing rehabilitation, how you cope with that.
And I think that was what saved my life was having the humor and physiotherapy
Mm,
or whatever the Americans call it, physical therapy.
mm,
But you know, occupational therapists, you know, they were friendly, they understood what you were
mm.
going through, you
Yeah.
know, mentally
Yes.
as well as physically.
And I would hope, um, gave you hope that, it wasn't always going to be bad as it was then, that things could get better and things could be done. I know often when I'm working with people and I talk to them about the things that can be done, maybe adapting their homes so they can use a wheelchair around the house, and it's like a light bulb moment. They realise that things could be better, and that with the right help and the funding in place, that things could get a bit better. There is some hope that it's not always going to be dreadful. And I know when I was ill and I had a year of rehab, it has to be said, I wasn't the world's best patient. I
No,
was I was very good at telling them that they should be doing it differently. And if it was me doing it, I'd do it. I wasn't very good at being on the receiving end of it. I was just being grumpy because I could be grumpy, I think. But
now with a lot of stroke survivors, we use a doctors use a word with us which we hate. Do you ever use the word plateaued?
oh, plateaued. No, I don't like to think of plateau. There's always room for a bit of improvement, isn't there? However small those steps are, there's always room for a little bit more.
Mm. And have you seen a difference in me, Joe?
Huge, huge. I was thinking earlier about, I won't talk about dark days and things, but I saw you once and you were very poorly and very low and you had taken to your bed. And I came round to see if we could do anything to get you up and about again and what could be done in the house. And I encouraged you out of bed. Do you remember? I
I
made you
do.
get you out of bed. And well, I was thinking, and I thought, I don't know whose knees were wobbling the most, yours or mine. So I was very confident, saying, "Come on up, come on out of bed." And I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but you did it, and you're back up on your feet. And now it's a huge change because you're in a better house as well now. That's more suitable for you.
Definitely.
Yeah, and
I
to
have to
see you.
I have to tell you all a joke before I go. Um, my carer asked Jude, because as you know, Jude's a priest, um, would you do Mike's funeral? And I said, over my dead body.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, you
So,
need a bit of
Joe,
humour. Yeah.
yeah, I think everybody says, um, a stroke is not for the weak. Jerry uses that all the time, but I'm sure your condition isn't for the weak either.
No. Well, I don't know. I'm sure some people feel weak and other people are stronger about it. Everybody is different in how they come to terms with it. But I think when life deals you a raw deal, you've got to get on and do it, haven't you? And I know when I was ill and people said, "Oh, you're so brave," and I really hate that expression because I'm not brave. I'm no braver than the next person. but I just get on with it, because what's the alternative if you don't get on and try and keep a positive mind and keep striving to do a little bit more.
I know when people say I'm an inspiration, I can't take that because I don't think I am.
No, I don't think I've done anything different. So it is nice to receive compliments, isn't it? But it doesn't. I often think it doesn't really apply.
So Lynette has had 8 strokes and
Gosh,
a ruptured brainstem aneurysm. So
gosh,
she has a lot of speech therapy over the
yeah,
years.
yeah. Oh.
Right, bear with me. I just want to find this quote I found. Keep talking, Joe.
Well, I can give you an inspirational quote. Look, my brother, it came from my brother, before he knew he was ill, and he was actually talking to his daughter when she was struggling with exams and doing all the work she needed to do. And she said to him, "How can I ever cope with this? How am I supposed to do all this?" And he said, "How do you eat an elephant? You break it up into tiny pieces and you just get on and eat it piece by piece." And that, I think, says it all, doesn't it? That you can't eat the whole lot in one go, but if you tackle it bit by bit, then it's amazing, how much better you can get. If I think back to when I first came out of hospital and Danny was carrying me up the stairs, and then I couldn't be left on my own in the house. Because I'd become ill so quickly, I was terrified of it happening again. And so I always had someone in the house with me. And so bit by bit, I had to learn to be in the house on my own for a while, and then learn to walk. I had no stamina, sort of 2 minutes on my feet and I was done for. So I learned to walk, and I can remember just walking down to the village, maybe 200 yards, to drop Will at a birthday party and home again, um, clutching my mobile phone, but so pleased that I had done it, and then bit by bit walking a little bit more, and every day just doing that little bit more. And you don't think too much at the time, especially when you're tired and weary with it all. But it's when you look back 6 weeks or 6 months and you think how much more you're doing compared to when you started.
That's amazing.
Mm.
So Naomi said, every one of you are inspirational.
Well, yeah, everybody has their own story, something like this, don't they, to tell, and how they've coped with it. But I think I do think that when you're faced with it, you have no choice but to do your best to fight it and stay positive. You wouldn't choose to be like it. I know I wouldn't choose to have this illness. But because you can either be angry, rail against it, or you can think, well, okay, what's done is done. I've got this illness. Let's get on and make the most of what we can do.
Okay, one last question, Joe.
Yeah.
Please solve this global pandemic.
Yeah, no. I wish I could. Let's just hope there's a vaccination sometime soon.
Me too.
But yeah, I'm spending my time in lockdown looking at holidays and where I could travel, and places I'd like
No,
to go.
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. No, Danny, he has said, well, for our holidays, for many years, he wouldn't go to an island. We've only been able to go somewhere where we have access to a hospital. Um, that doesn't involve taking a boat or a plane to get there. So we haven't done islands, but in the pandemic now, in this lockdown, he said, "Oh, I'd love to go back to Corfu." So he's giving in. I've ground him down. I think he's going to give in, and maybe we'll go to the Greek islands or
Is he
something.
there? Tell him to pop in and say hello.
Danny, are you there? Danny, oh, he's disappeared. I can
So,
go again. He'll come
Salu's
back.
leaving us now. Salu's got to get Tom ready for her show.
Yeah.
But thank you,
Come
Sue.
and say hello. He's here. Apparently you're the, what did we call him?
Danny the Marvellous.
Oh, Danny the Marvellous.
Wrong
Oh,
side.
this
Good
side.
afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, very well, thank you. And you?
So Joe was lucky to have what you, Joe was 1 in a million. See, we're all bringing our spouses in now.
Definitely 1 in a million, yes.
On the wrong shoulder.
I think it's just a cheesy chat up line myself, but there we are. It worked. Hi, Jude.
I'm just washing up.
Oh, right, go do the washing up. Go.
Just done shopping.
Right, Joe and Danny, thank you so much for telling us your story. I
Lovely
really
to talk to you.
appreciate it.
Yes,
And once
lovely to-
again, you were one of the most inspirational people in my life. So
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to talk to you all.
Bye.
Bye.
God bless
Bye.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.